For kickoff for quarterly financial reporting for this fiscal year. Thank you, everybody, for making time to be here. We'll try to keep this as brief as we can, but we'll try to give a little bit of depth and substance as we jump into this new template. And we're going to touch on sort of our slightly adapted approach with the new financial performance framework for this year. So just by way of introduction, do you want to hit the next slide, Michael? Perfect. So do you want to introduce yourself first, Michael?
Michael Gother-Pudgeons, Management Analyst 3. You're on the Financial Performance Oversight team. I am the primary point of contact for the quarterly financials and annual independent audit.
Perfect, thank you. And I'm Nate Hansen, a Financial Performance Manager, new to the team as of this spring, and thrilled to be here. So thank you all again for being here. Molly, looks like I think you are on. Do you want to share? We wanted to kind of give everybody opportunity to put faces with names, and so we invited Molly to join in. So any primary questions would go to Michael first. Any epicenter questions or troubleshooting should be directed to Molly first. So do you want to share your screen and introduce yourself to us, Molly?
Yep. Name is Molly Burkhart. I'm also a management analyst under the organizational performance framework. And if you have any questions about Epicenter for any task, please feel free to reach out to me.
Perfect. Thank you for being here, Molly. Much appreciated.
Yep.
All right. And then I'm not sure if Katie is on the call this morning.
Katie's in another meeting right now.
Yep. So, but yeah, and I'm sure you're all familiar with Katie, our fearless leader of authorizing. So, yep. All right. So, next slide, Michael. All right. So, brief overview. Just a reminder for everybody. So, quarterly financial reports are due. So, for Q1, which is the quarter ending September 30th, those are due November 1st. So that's coming up soon. We got the new template out to you all last week. So you get started on that, and we're going to walk through a little tour today, and again, some of our reasoning, but just a brief reminder that Q2 is due February 1, Q3 is due May 1. August 1 has historically, I think, is the due date for Q4. But we did want to sort of get a quick point of feedback. We're considering pushing that back potentially to September 1, if that may be helpful for people to be able to sort of have closed out your year by that point. So, oops, we have somebody needing to join. Thank you, Michael. So just a quick, if anybody wants to speak up or in the chat, give a quick indication of whether September 1 might be helpful as a due date for Q4 so that you can largely close out your year. Again, that wouldn't be audited figures. Those will come later. Typically, those would not be ready yet. But what are people's thoughts? Is that something that might be helpful or not worth the hassle? Any opinions? Definitely helpful from Robin Cunningham. That would be helpful. Josh Padilla. Yes, Monica Patel. All right, we're at 3 for 3. Okay. Cool. Yep. Feel free to share any other thoughts. 4 for 4. Nachum. How do you say that?
Nachum.
And
okay. Can I vote? Can I vote multiple times? Can you check my ID?
Put up both hands. All right. Well, we're 4 for 4, 5 for 5 now with Steve. All right. Perfect. All right. So I think that is positive feedback about that notion. Okay, so we'll take that into account. Thank you, everybody. Next slide, Michael. All right, so why do we do quarterly reporting? So again, I think it's important for us to always understand the reason that we're doing things, what's that why? So we want to ensure regular monitoring. That helps us to it helps you to be aware, it helps us to be aware of sort of the pulse, where everybody's at, what's going on, and it helps to prevent, identify, troubleshoot, and resolve potential problems in a more timely manner. Number two, and I would say this is critical, this flows from that monitoring, is it empowers better financial decision making. So our hope is that through this process, we're trying to make some improvements that can help shorten the internal feedback loop for you, as well as the feedback loop with us in it. But to shorten that feedback loop among your school leadership, your finance staff, and your school boards. We really want to help you guys to work effectively and to have a comprehensive picture of what's going on and be able to reach out for support from us or from your third-party providers or potential capital sources where needed. We really want to be playing that active role to support you all. And then again, finally, it's necessary for us to fulfill the compliance requirements. It facilitates financial oversight as required by NRS that we have to perform. So, all right, next slide. All right, Michael brought up a great analogy as we were thinking about how to present this. And so again, just as part of the why for regular monitoring, we like the analogy of healthcare. Do you want to jump on this, Michael, actually, or do you want me to sort of paraphrase the way you had presented it?
Well, yeah, I can kind of go over it that your quarterlies are kind of akin to a just regular office visit to make sure there's nothing obvious wrong. With the annual independent audit being like your annual physical where they do the full blood panel and really get under the hood, and your intervention ladder, the notice of concern and the notice of breach, and hopefully never the notice of intent to close. But we live in a world where those are necessary. Would be your prescription and or surgical intervention in the case of the higher levels if needed.
Yep. Thank you, Michael. Yeah, and I think the thing that I love about this analogy is the focus on preventive care. We want to, by doing ongoing best practices, it really helps us stay out of some of those crisis modes. Again, sometimes things happen that are outside of our control, but there's much that we can do on an ongoing basis, and really our intent is to support you all in performing that ongoing maintenance and preventive care. So, all right, thanks, Michael. Next slide. All right, so we had a couple of goals that we tried to address with the new template and a little bit of this new approach this year. So number one, we simplified the financial performance framework. I'm sure that you've noticed that we eliminated the cash flow rating. We had a lot of feedback that essentially pointed out that seemed arbitrary from the point of view that a school essentially making large capital expenditures to pay for a new building, for example, for expansion. A school that's otherwise, growing, active, doing what it's supposed to be doing, serving students well, there was sort of an automatic punitive measure sort of built in with that prior cash flow rating. So by eliminating that, we're trying to intentionally free you up to be able to make those intentional investments where that makes sense. We want you to be thinking strategically. We want you to be thinking proactively. We don't want there to be sort of that, again, that automated punitive measure. We also hope that gives you a little more adaptability as you're going along, so that you can take advantage of opportunities that may arise that may have been unanticipated where necessary, or adapt to other emergencies. And again, we hope that can help you shorten the feedback loop in your financial decision making. Next slide. In order to do this, everybody who is in any sort of operation, business or private sector, we understand that money is the lifeblood still of our operations. So cash flow still matters. So in order to eliminate that rating, essentially what we're doing is eliminating sort of that automated punitive measure, but we want to gain a better sense of what's going on a regular basis. Number one, fundamentally, actually, we are trying to be adaptive to really what best, you may have noticed in overall with financial performance framework updates, we made some decisions that were informed based on by our school's actual experiences and what we're seeing and what we've seen historically in some ways where that was clear. And so getting a better sense of how cash flow is happening and where sort of those warning signs and trigger points may become obvious. Really, we're trying to build that sort of mental and intellectual framework to be able to identify better. We don't want to just impose arbitrary bureaucratic constraints just because they are tradition or because we haven't done that homework. So the trade-off for eliminating the rating is that we are going to apply a little bit, or we need a little bit more information so that we can feel confident that we're understanding how your cash is actually flowing. So we're going to do that by one of the things that we've added. We're going to walk through the templates a little bit later. We're asking for cash account balance information. We want this to be minimally invasive. So essentially just whatever accounts you have in any given month, just take that account balance and just drop in that piece of data. Your revolving credit account balances, same idea. Essentially, this will help us gain a sense of, outside of cash on hand that you have available for emergencies or for further investments and growth, what sort of ready cash or ready credit do you have available, and how is that being managed on an ongoing basis? But what of that is available? And again, those tend to be higher interest rate credit accounts anyway. So that may also be indicative of a school that could be getting into financial trouble if high balances are being maintained, for example. We also, based directly on feedback from Dusty, who couldn't be here, is on vacation right now, but he's been very actively involved. He has taken point in reviewing some of our struggling schools. And he suggested that we use monthly data rather than just quarterly, that may give us a better, more accurate, timely picture, or I guess more nuanced picture about what is happening on an ongoing basis. That gives us essentially 12 data points a year rather than just 4. For most schools, we think, we think the marginal effort of providing that should be minimal. And for most schools, the additional info may not be necessary, but we think that for those schools that may be starting or getting into trouble, that it may be very helpful for us to have that additional, more detailed, nuanced insight. So we've added that piece. But again, we only want those to be submitted quarterly, so you don't have to be submitting this monthly. And then finally, one of the things that we built in is more solid reference to school budgets. We do want to emphasize budgeting planning. We provided a new template this year. We've already got some drafts for a new template, even further upgraded template for next year. We really want you to be leaning in thoughtfully to your budgeting processes, ensuring that there is sort of active communication going on, again, among school leadership, finance staff, and school boards, that any amendments to those budgets are being approved by school boards, et cetera. Again, we think that being intentional in our planning will help us to be intentional in our spending and operations. Again, we can't anticipate everything. Emergencies happen. Life is weird, but we want to be leaning on that intentionality as much as possible. All right, next slide, Michael. All right, and then another thing that we added, you may have noticed in the template that we provided last week, we want to provide sort of a quicker point of feedback about your potential financial performance framework ratings. So typically those have happened once a year in the past. Those are performed on the basis of your final audited financial statements. So typically so basically those by the time that is completed, those audited financial statements, that's typically well into the following school year, fiscal year. The ability to adapt and take corrective action or simply, again, make some nuanced change really it's hard to do that at that point. So what we're hoping is that by having this built in on sort of an automated basis, having these calculations built in, that this can provide a shorter feedback loop to have a sense of sort of what is that glide path, what is that trajectory that you're on toward your final end of year ratings well in advance. In particular, if you're seeing Q1 and Q2, challenges in those quarters, we want you to be able to identify that more quickly if that's not already otherwise apparent, and to be able to take some action to hopefully mitigate that before the end of the year, and those actual ratings do occur and are locked in with approval of our board. So the way these work, we have them built in. Next slide. So there are a few key caveats with this, though. So number one, these are based on these are based on your self-reported data on an ongoing basis, again, provided quarterly. So they're not based on your final audited. So if your auditor does find something that was not previously indicated on your quarterlies, obviously that would show up different in your final rating. But the point is that this is sort of suggestive of, broadly speaking, what is that trajectory and where you may want to focus your efforts and attentions to maintain good financial health. Number two, unrestricted days cash on hand. So the way that has been built into the new financial performance framework, it references essentially for your final year-end rating, it wants you to be anticipating what is your budget for the following year. So that is the reference point. So by definition, the unrestricted days cash on hand metric, as it is built in here for this tentative piece on the quarterly suggested ratings, it is not looking ahead 24 months. It can't see the following year for which no budget is present. So essentially, it's using this year's budget as a proxy. So again, if you're anticipating significant growth in the following year, or if there is some other large expenditure, some emergency that happens in the interim, then that would not necessarily be reflected in the rating as it comes out through the quarterly sort of automated feedback loop. And then number three, enrollment variance. So we are using ADE in the quarterly reporting as opposed to count day. Count day is the actual basis for your enrollment variance end of year rating. We do want to emphasize good projections in your budget build. We do want you to be as accurate as possible and reasonably conservative in projecting your enrollments. So we do want to stick strictly to those count day figures. Those are used, that's been the historic basis. But we know that ADE, you see those shifts on a quarterly basis as student enrollment may fluctuate, and that is what we're using, and it has some utility here in other ways as well. I do want to make sure we have time to walk through the template, so I'm gonna keep moving forward. So, but I will just say this: if once count day is completed, if you want to plug that in for your internal purposes into that field within the template to get a better sense of what that final rating may be, you're welcome to do that. But we want the final submission that's certified by you guys on your quarterly report to reflect ADE specifically. So, thank you. Thank you, Michael. All right, so we're just going to do a quick overview. Michael's going to give the tour, but we have basic instruction tab right at the beginning. Next slide, we have a certification tab. Again, Michael will go through the detail. Critical piece here is that this is where you indicate your school, fiscal year, the quarter, the budget iteration. Those are critical. Those carry throughout. In particular, the budget iteration in the functionality. When you implement an amended budget during the course of the year, there's a comparison piece in here that will reference that. And so you want to make sure to update that budget iteration as you go along when you amend the budget. But this is pretty straightforward. This should look comparable to what you're providing, what you provided on your budgets this year. Okay, next slide. Couple key things. Actually, sorry, I didn't jump into detail. So the initial questions, there are some drop downs that Michael will review for you. They detail non-current debt payments. So one of the things that we are concerned about, there have been a number of schools that have had, for example, PERS payments that were missed. So we really want to gain more detailed and nuanced insight as to what's going on with debt payments. So we have the missed obligations rating element. There's a little bit of potential ambiguity in there. What we want to promote is proactive understanding of your position, proactive action. If you do miss a payment, get behind on something, we want to see that you are timely, actively leaning in and addressing those things. So again, with the transparency with cash flow, we also need a little bit more transparency around debt payments. That's something we're asking for. And we've broken those out with a little bit more nuance, PERS payments versus bond payments, for example. But really, we want to get an ongoing sense of where you are with those. And again, my expectation is that as we move forward with this, we'll build a little body of information that will indicate to us, hey, maybe a healthy school that happened to have a one payment that was 30 days late. Maybe that does not suggest that they should have automatically a false far below standard, for example, and should be recommended for notice. Whereas maybe there's a threshold that would identify a pattern or a certain type of payment that may be more indicative of concern. So again, we're trying to build that awareness in so that we can understand and give potentially better and more insightful feedback to you all, and that the ratings better reflect actual financial health. So again, our goal here is transparency. That helps us see what's going on. And again, we want you to be proactive on these things. So the transparency helps us see that that's taking place. Second, we want to contextualize any significant cash balance changes. So again, you're not being automatically punished for making capital investments, but we do want to make sure that we can see, if the cash balance shifts significantly, what is actually going on there? Was there, a pipe broke, there's emergency repair? Did you hire some new staff? Is this part of, a facility expansion? That will help us sort of gain that little more nuanced insight. And then finally, the key piece on the certification, and Michael will show this at the end, is that we want to make sure that you're affirming the accuracy and completeness of your reporting. So we want school leaders to confirm this. We want you to be confident in your staff. We want you to be reviewing this information with your staff and to be able to sign off confidently about the accuracy of the information provided. All right, next slide. All right, so the dashboard, Michael's going to walk through it in greater detail, but essentially third tab is sort of a summary of what gets input elsewhere. So you'll have some enrollment information at the top. We're also breaking this out to show a quick summary of essentially revenue and expenditure per pupil and net surplus per pupil. Just so that you can see, we're trying to make this more informative at a glance, both for not just finance staff, but for school leadership and school boards as well. And it helps us also have a quick glimpse into sort of what's happening. So we have enrollment information goes in or is summarized. We have your net surplus, which is your revenue and expenditure information, net position, which is asset and liability information. Account balances will summarize those cash accounts and the revolving credit accounts. And then finally, your estimated FPF rating is at the bottom. All right, tab number 4 is the budget tab. This should be pretty comparable to what you've provided previously in your budgets for this year. This is a high level. This is not going into super detailed. This is just a high level overall structure, but it is based on chart of accounts, as are your budget documents. It aligns with that budget template. And the information you put in here should match your final budget or the most recent amended budget when you submit it. So next slide. All right, 5th tab is monthly data entry. Michael spent some time in this. As you can see, actually, do you want to go back to the last slide, Michael? So as you can see, it's broken out on a monthly basis, but again, only submitted quarterly. And again, just the basic information that's rolled up into the dashboard: enrollment, revenue, expenditures, assets, liabilities. Pretty straightforward. Next slides.
And Timothy has his hand up.
Oh, I'm sorry, I missed that. Go for it, Timothy. Oh, I think you're on mute, Timothy. Can you hear us?
I am. So if you go back to the budget slide, the final budget, when you refer to the final budget, is that the one that's submitted back in April, May? And then the amended and re-amended is if you submit amended budgets going forward?
Yep.
Okay, I just want to make sure I know which one goes where.
Yep.
Because it was not clean.
Yep. So we sent out our initial budget template. We sent out to give you the opportunity to submit a tentative budget. That was a point of awareness and feedback, so that we could see sort of what challenges you might be having with a new template that we were drafting, and to give some feedback about making that useful, and ensuring that you were getting that information in correctly. So the very first one that you submitted that was tentative is not what we're talking about here. This is the final one that you certified, and that final budget is what is submitted to NDE and to, as I recall, LCB, as well as SPCSA.
Right.
So that's the one that you signed off on. So that is,
Okay.
that's sort of that baseline final, that's your starting point for the year. The tentative one was sort of a practice.
I guess I'm not a fan of when you say final, I take that to mean final, which would be the final one at the end of the year, not the final one at the beginning.
Yeah, totally fair.
It's the nomenclature, not the which I know which one to use. It's just the nomenclature that you use to determine.
Yeah. So that's the description that we've given it here in our internal budget documents. If something else would be useful, by vote of the group, we can certainly adapt that. But yeah, that's what we've called it, as sort of your final budget pro forma, perhaps we'll say the final pro forma. And then that gets amended as you go along, as you make any significant changes. And sort of what you're calling the final is what we've called re-amended, for example. So yeah. If anybody has any questions about that, or if we need to update any vocabulary, we're open to that. So yeah, great question. Thank you, Tim. All right. Original suggestion is original budget as opposed to final. Okay, I'm not opposed to that. Yeah, okay, we'll take that into account potentially for next year's templates. But yeah, we'll do some workshops as we're prepping next year's budget documents. So feel free to bring that up again at that time. So in the brain. All right, Michael, go ahead onto the next slide. Scroll down. I think we're on account balances. All right. Yep. And then this is where you'll input your cash accounts and your revolving credit accounts. So the keys here, and Mike will walk through in detail the functionality. Just brief, basic description. What bank it's with, for example. What's the purpose? An indication of whether that's a checking account or local government investment pool, for example, and then also distinguishing between restricted and unrestricted. That helps us sort of have a sense of how liquid and available that actually is. And then secondarily with revolving credit accounts, again, basic description of which bank, what it's for. We are asking for the credit limit. Just to have a sense of that credit utilization, because again, that can be an indicator of, hey, you've got 50 grand available, for this emergency that costs 30, or you are maxed out and struggling, and that's a potential issue. And then final thing on there is that the statement date. We acknowledge that statement dates are not consistent; they don't just run to the month end. Our intent is to keep this tab as easy as possible for you guys. So essentially, as I believe I said earlier, with the cash accounts, whatever that statement is for the month of November, for example, just indicate that, end of month balance under cash account, and then same thing for revolving credit. Maybe that, November 12th is your statement end date. Just indicate that the 12th is your statement date, and whatever that balance is on the 12th would just go in for the revolving account balance at that time. Yep. All right. Next slide, Michael. All right. Any questions right now before we jump into Michael's more detailed review? He has two examples that he's filled out. One that we're calling the best practice school, and the other the struggling school. But any other questions before we jump into that sort of more detailed tour within the template itself? All right. Seeing none, do you want to jump into the tour, Michael?
Yep.
All right. Thank you all.
Yeah. So starting with the best practice school, the first tab that should open up is instructions. That's exactly what the name says, the quick instructions if you need to reference them. First tab you actually have to do anything on is this certification. Starting with making sure that you switch all of these from the select from drop down to whatever the appropriate one is. Make sure you have the correct year, quarter, budget, and I know there probably aren't many teachers on this call. Please put your name on your homework. The teachers appreciate that joke, but and then for the debt payment and obligations, just a very quick 5 yes, no, or not applicable. In an ideal world, all of these are going to be yes or not applicable. Unfortunately, we live in a world where stuff happens. So, and I did, for best practice, very intentionally have them fall behind on 1, kind of as a indicator that even the best of us make mistakes. In their example, they had a change in bond servicer, and they failed to update their automatic payment on time. They have, though, made a payment plan to make up those payments, and they are making those payments timely. We kind of skip over the dashboard while filling it out. Before we move on, if you have answered no to any of these questions, it is required you add notes in the debt obligation. However, even if you say yes to everything, if you want to add notes, so there's almost never been a time where it's been a bad thing to give more information and have it not be needed than not provide information that was needed. And also, what other explanatory notes is a completely optional one. And personally, if I was filling it out, I would wait until the end to fill that out. And further down is the certification. I would recommend doing this at the end. We skip over the dashboard because if you haven't filled anything out yet, that's going to just be blank. The first tab you actually input anything on is this budget tab. This should match your charter school budget form, previously known as the 4405. I know some people are going to probably call it the 4405 until the sun goes cold. So in case there's any of you that are still familiar with it under that name, as we discussed, this final is the one that's submitted in June. Historically, final budget is the name that NDE has used for it. As Nate said, we are, though, open to changing that to something that's a little bit clearer. All these numbers should tie to the final budget or amended, re-amended, whichever iteration you're on. Just very high level, all of your 1,000s, all of your 3,000s, etc., going down. And we, I mean, this is a pretty straightforward one. I'll move on to monthly data entry. This one is relatively similar to what we had before. We have changed it to line up with the charter school budget format. Again, we're using ADE rather than count day. And just monthly data at that very high level. And where we do deviate from the charter school budget is on assets and liabilities. So our technical guide still rates the debt to assets based on statement of net position, the government-wide report. So for the quarterlies, we are asking, for the sake of consistency, you enter the government-wide statement of net position data under assets and liabilities. We try to best match the line items that are most common in the annual audits. So, however, obviously we can't match everyone's exactly since each auditor has a different standard. If it doesn't match exactly, just try to get it as close as possible. Important notes, the GASB 87 leases and capital assets are net of amortization and net of depreciation. We don't do your full asset and then a contra asset further down, which I know some places prefer to report that way. Yeah. And then also on the liabilities. So we do ask that you split for your GASB 87 and long-term notes, bonds, and loans payments that are due within the next 12 months off from your total balances. So make sure that when you enter that information, the total balance on the GASB 87 and notes, bonds, and loans, that you aren't including that portion twice. And also a final reminder on this tab, we do ask for your net pension liability and the other post-employment benefits. So this is information only. When we actually do the ratings, those are not factored into it. The only liabilities that will count is everything above the line for the net pension liability. Yeah. The next tab is the account balances. This is a brand new tab that we haven't had before. As Nate went over, this is kind of the trade-off of getting rid of the cash balance measure. We no longer automatically penalize having cash balance decrease, with the trade-off being that we do need to have that extra transparency to see how the cash is being managed. This is a pretty simple one. Just account name is so your name of the bank, the type, and you might have the same account name multiple times if you have sub-accounts. Like in this example, they have checking, savings, and certificate of deposit. Whether it's restricted or unrestricted, just a very brief explanation of the purpose. Like these examples are a great I guess guideline would be the right word of what we're looking for. What's for daily operations, what's for long-term savings. If you have a security deposit, to what's security deposit, what's invested for long-term. And these are just your end-of-month statements. So in a perfect world, these numbers would tie to the cash numbers. We understand it's not a perfect world. There's always that one transaction that you've put in the books that hasn't cleared the bank yet. So if they don't match, just use the statement balance, and we understand that in the real world they don't always match.
Yeah, we're not asking for reconciled. We're just asking for the raw statement balance. So, yep.
So, and then for the revolving credit, it's the same thing. Name of the account, credit limit, the monthly statement date, and the purpose. So, and these ones we definitely know aren't going to tie to anything just because the statement date is never the end of the month. So just go on the statement date. And we do ask that you include any revolving credit that you have. even if it's not currently being used. Knowing what's available but not in use is almost as important as knowing what's actually in use. Once you've had everything filled out, we go back to the dashboard, and it's going to automatically
do you mind
um,
popping back for a second, Michael? Sorry.
oh, yeah.
Under the account balances. For the revolving credit off to the right, you'll see there is a blue column that we added a quick credit utilization measurement. Again, this will give us an at-a-glance point of feedback, but if this is useful or helpful to you in your internal deliberations and planning, again, there are plenty of things out there about how the credit utilization can impact credit and sustainability, et cetera. So thank you.
Thank you. Well, yeah, and then for the dashboard, this automatically fills out for you, where it's going to give that most recent ADE, gives you the quick stats on your per pupil numbers, the quarterly summary of the revenues and expenditures. So the your balances on the statement of net position as of quarter end, as well as a summary of your account balances, the total unrestricted and restricted, as well as that revolving credit and utilization. A quick note, we have added this budget remaining column, and there's a lot of this that we do kind of look at. We don't expect a even 25% per quarter on most things. Things like salary and benefit, we might raise a few questions if you've gone through half of your budget in the first quarter. But for the most part, we're just checking for overall reasonableness, and we're hoping you're checking to make sure that you're where you expect it to be.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's a quick just representation of your burn rate. So again, for internal use, if you're not tracking that otherwise, that can be a quick summary at a glance, and that's how we'll use it as well.
And then finally at the bottom is the snapshot estimated ratings. So I will just quickly point out, we are aware that some of the conditional formatting doesn't work. The
colors, though, so in quarters 2 through 4 that you see there that aren't automatically grayed out, the quarters that have been entered, we tested and worked, but the graying piece, we'll do a fix on that. So,
yeah, since obviously you aren't in the red for quarters that haven't happened yet.
Yeah.
And Nate kind of gave his spiel earlier about the missed obligations. So we do have a bit of ambiguity in that rating in the technical guide. We don't want this to be a gotcha. It is much better to be transparent up front than for us to find out a year later on the audit and have had it become much worse than it otherwise would have been.
Yes.
And once you have gone through everything and you are satisfied that it is accurate, you can come back to the certification tab. If you have any notes to add, go ahead and add them. Just need then to fill out the authorized signatory. Ideally, you'll do an e-signature. If your Microsoft Office and/or Adobe doesn't have that built in, don't think you need to go out and buy that just for this. We also have the submission record in Epicenter. So if you just want to type your name in a fancy font, that's going to be good enough for. And then your other example I was going to do, maybe. Am I actually sharing right now? Or,
Yes.
all right. So, yeah, because so the preview window isn't coming up on my Teams right now for what's being shared. So we're this is our struggling school of Las Vegas. I'm not going to go over all of the data entry again, just going to be as an example of the things we're looking for as red flags. So
And again, to say the things that we're looking for as red flags, we are not here to play gotcha. We are here to be aware of your financial situation. We are trying to learn what we can do to support. And as much as anything, we want this to be a part of that feedback loop so that you can identify internally as soon as possible when crises are developing so that you can get all the necessary support that you need internally, externally, et cetera.
Yeah, if we go back to the healthcare analogy from earlier, these are the things that if we see in just a regular office visit, we're going to be recommending the follow-up testing potentially with a specialist. Now, this isn't a punitive, when I say looking for red flags, it's not a punitive thing. It's these are going to draw our attention to make sure we can hopefully help the school get back to good financial health before we're in the operating room doing emergency surgery.
Yes.
So this unfortunately very aptly named school has fallen behind on their PERS. However, they are on a payment plan that they're getting current with. They have, though, indicated that they have a credit card that is over the limit. They're making the interest payments on it, but aren't able to bring the balance down, so they're still over the limit fees every month. And that is something that when we're looking at the account balances, we do see that card over the limit, currently at 103%. Also, while we're on this page, something else we would probably notice is no long-term savings. Obviously, if you need every penny you can for operations, don't put money aside that you need to. Don't save money at the expense of your program. I hope I phrased that a good way. That's not going to be horribly misinterpreted, but
these public monies are intended to benefit our students. But we also acknowledge that any operation, no matter what it is, needs financial stability, and that benefits the ultimate services, having that financial stability. So yes, there is a balance there.
Yeah, and on the dashboard, the things that we'd see on this that we're going to be definitely doing follow-ups and doing further diagnostics is seeing a per pupil surplus go from 219 to 40 in a single quarter. We are definitely calling in the cardiologist on that one. The fact that aside from one card being over the limit, that the overall utilization is 97%. If anything comes up where there's a liquidity problem, there just is not flexibility to solve that with easy credit. And looking at the preliminary ratings, aside from the fact that there's a lot of red and yellow, we're just looking at the numbers themselves. When we see over a single quarter a drop of 9 days cash, and it's not because of a planned purchase, so you're decreasing enrollment to over quarter to quarter, and in particular the going from 20% debt service, which is by most standards barely sustainable, to 26% over a single quarter, when that's very firmly in the most lenders are going to question whether or not you can afford your debts range. So this example is a bit of an extreme, but wanted to give you an idea of the things we're looking at. So hopefully, if you weren't looking at those things already, you'll be looking at them too. So there isn't any big surprises when there's follow-ups. I mean, hopefully we aren't going to have to follow up with any of you. I would love nothing more than for every single quarterly report to be nothing but green down here. I wouldn't, as I probably wouldn't have a job then because we wouldn't be needed, but unfortunately, unfortunately we have seen actual numbers like this in the past. So those are the trends we are looking at.
I might reframe that last statement, Michael, just slightly. Obviously, the decision making about how your monies are used, that is in your hands. That is not up to us. However, to the degree that we are able to support and guide and influence, I would say that it is a marker of success for our agency and our team if we are able to help all of you stay in the green as much as possible.
Yeah, and I wasn't trying to imply that
You're good.
we would be doing any controlling. I mean, kind of the opposite. If in an ideal world, there would be no need for oversight, but we unfortunately don't live in that ideal world.
We live in a real world.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. And the one thing that I also point out, again, I think I mentioned it, but wanted to make sure, this is the date that you actually submitted in Epicenter, or not necessarily the date you complete it. I know most of the time those 2 days are going to be the same day, but if you complete this at 9 o'clock on Friday night and you know you're not submitting it until Monday morning, make sure you're putting that submission date and not the completion date.
Just a little bit more detail while you're on that screen, under other explanatory notes. I think we kind of swept past that pretty quickly for both of us. So this is your opportunity to provide any context, any nuance, any narrative that you feel is necessary. This is not required, but this is your opportunity. Again, I would say recommended if you have large capital expenditures, indicate in here just briefly sort of what that's about. Yeah, we're doing a 10,000 square foot expansion, etc. Okay. This is your opportunity to provide whatever context and nuance that may be helpful to us to comprehend what your overall picture is and what may be changing, what may be going on. And again, this can be one piece in that dialogue. And again, if you have any questions or concerns, even upon submitting these things, you need additional help. We do want to emphasize we are not just sitting here at arm's length. We're here to help and support. So if you're identifying challenges that you're having and not quite sure what to do to address those, again, we don't have a magic wand necessarily, but again, we're happy to be a resource. We want to be a resource and part of that support and conversation to help you as we can.
And to add to kind of Nate's list of really good uses for the other explanatory notes, so something I know is relatively common with a lot of schools, is going really heavy on supplies purchases at the beginning of the year. So if you're one of those schools and you have a Q1 that makes it look like you're burning through budget insanely fast. But you know it's okay because you have almost nothing left to purchase. So this would be the perfect place to explain that. I don't like having to follow up with schools every year to ask why their first quarter numbers look bad, just for them to have to every year tell me again we buy all our supplies up front. So please put that in the explanatory notes. Save us both the email.
All right. Does that wrap up your tour, Michael?
Yeah.
Cool. Thank you very much. Cool. All right. So back to questions or observations or recommendations. Any commentary for the good of the group? Anything that looks problematic or challenging right out of the gate? Are there any major questions as far as functionality or what really needs to be included, or concerns about the overall structure framework for the quarterly reporting? Okay, I'm seeing none. All right. Okay. Well, I appreciate everybody making time for this. I'm thrilled that we have 26 participants. Connie says in the chat, thank you for the places in the reporting where we can give you a narrative response. Absolutely. Yeah. And if you need more space, if something like that is necessary, you're always welcome to add to that, or add another attachment if necessary. Steve asked to be resent the template that you didn't receive it last week. Okay. Actually, Michael, do you want, I can't speak as directly to the Epicenter, how these, I don't recall if it was email this was distributed by, but let's talk about how to keep everybody on an email list. I know that currently we are sort of Frankensteining an email list out of Epicenter, if I understand it correctly, and I'm describing it reasonably poorly.
That is a somewhat accurate description. Our email lists are maintained by once a week our amazing AA Carrie does an export from Epicenter, and then she manually enters it all into SharePoint contact lists. So it is not an ideal system, and it does also depend very heavily on everyone keeping their Epicenter up to date.
And we definitely want to encourage that on an ongoing basis for sure.
And yes, the plan is to send out the recording of today. Microsoft isn't immediate on processing it and making it ready to share, but as soon as it is, we'll get that sent out. If you don't get it, feel free to send a follow-up email bugging us. So, and we also will be. We can also resend the template as well. It should also, the updated template should be live on Epicenter now as well. I'm trying to double check that real quick.
Okay. While you're doing that, I will say I'm inclined. We did notice this morning that, again, the color formatting for the projected ratings, where when it's a zero value, they're not all gray. We're going to correct that, and I think we'll probably upload that to Epicenter as soon as we've completed that today. So if you haven't started yet, if you've already started on it, don't worry about it. It's not going to impact functionality at all. Just that visual reference for those later quarters is what it looks like is happening. We take pride in testing our work. We really want to give you useful tools, but we do acknowledge we are human, just as we all are. If you do find any functionality issues or something that doesn't make sense, again, we value the feedback. We always want to be challenging ourselves and to give as good quality of work as we can. But again, if you find something that is a point of potential improvement, please let us know.
Yeah, and I did verify that the new version, at least according to Epicenter's administrative center, where it's saying that the new version is live. If you go into your Epicenter and you don't see the new version, let us know, and we'll bug Molly to get it fixed.
Yep. All right. So any other questions, thoughts, recommendations, requests? Yep. So yeah. So just to confirm, we will repost the updated template, and I'm inclined to send it out via email as well. So what I guess to follow that up, I am open to maintaining a separate email list. I do want everybody to be updating in Epicenter the current emails, but I know that is a little bit laborious. That gives a little bit of a lag for us. So if you would like to be included in an overt finance-related email list, please just email both of us, and we will draft one of those. But we'll make sure we get it to those of you that indicated in the chat that you did not receive the prior email. So yep, and again, we'll post this video as soon as we have it available. Any other questions or thoughts or recommendations, requests? All right. Well, we appreciate you all very much. We appreciate you investing the time both to be here and most of all in doing your part to educate our students and help your schools run well. So thank you all very much. And thank you, Michael, again for all the prep work. And we will see you all next time. Have a great one. Bye.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Thank you.